Everybody's waiting for you!
Greetings, my little mosh pit, and this is going to be an incredibly short video because I admittedly just wanted to get my thoughts out on the animated pilot for Homestuck, which released earlier today at the time of writing this script. I've been a Homestuck fan since middle school. I'm currently working on a much bigger project in collaboration with the Mr. Stuff, where the two of us go over classic fandom content, but that's still in the scripting phase and is a much more high effort video, so it's still in production. I'm also a pretty big fan of the works of Vivian Madrano, known online by her username VivsyPop. So when it was announced that an Australian branch of her studio Spindlehorse, named Spindleroo, would be creating an animated adaptation of the comic Homestuck, I was very much excited. Viv has stated publicly she had no involvement in either writing or directing the pilot. A fact I'm sure plenty of cartoon fans with Object Show profile pics who hate the fact Viv breathes the same air as them are surely going to ignore when they complain about how Dave says fuck a little too much, because these people have the same level of tolerance for adult content as the average Christian grandma, circa 2009, who thought Dragon Ball was a little too risque for them. Anyway, petty jabs against purity-obsessed fandom people aside, I wanted to lay out my first impressions on the pilot and go over some thoughts I felt were a little too in-depth for a simple blue sky friend. For starters, I do like the art style. It adapts the comic's minimal color palette, characters, and backgrounds really well into something more presentable for the average cartoon enjoyer. I know Magma Paint brought up in her video about the teaser, where she mentioned how she wasn't particularly the biggest fan of the John vs. Dad fight being all shonen-esque.
Visually, this looks really promising, but this first battle with John's dad and all the cakes is too over-the-top shonen fight for my liking.
Which is entirely fair, but for me personally, I feel like the choice allowed the fight to be more visually stimulating in animation, while still having all the goofy shit you'd expect from a Homestuck fight scene, which I do hope is a sign of how they handle fights in future episodes. I'm also really glad they chose to keep the show's setting in 2009 and didn't feel the need to modernize the time period like what happened with What If Fuse long since forgotten anime adaptation. I greatly prefer them keeping Homestuck in its original time period, and even incorporating that into the visuals, like how all the characters use period-correct phones, like John and Dave's flip phones, or Rose rocking the Nokia phone as made famous by Disney's Extreme Skate Adventure. I also liked how the show adapted the chat room aspect of the comic, having the characters appear in UI-shaped boxes around John when not on screen. Odd point to make, but this is how I'd personally adapt codec calls if I ever directed an animated adaptation in Metal Gear Solid. It's such a visually appealing way to do it while also keeping the concept intact. Now, I'd like to take a moment to discuss the changes that I feel are worth addressing. For starters, this pilot is a lot more fast-paced compared to this part of the comic that it's adapting, which admittedly is to be expected. Television is a different medium from comics, so I went into this pilot knowing the pacing would be altered, and maybe it's because I prefer more fast-paced story structures, but I don't mind the change at all. All the important bits are still intact, and they formatted the beginning of the comic to make a simple conflict with a proper resolution that gives a viewer a good idea of the main characters. Like any pilot should, in my opinion. Speaking of main characters, I also want to address Dave Strider's characterization in particular, because he seems to be a divisive talking point upon most fans' first viewing of the pilot from what I've seen online. Many complain Dave isn't chill enough like he is in the comic, and personally, I think the idea is that they're still adapting his I act aloof as a mask trait, but the series team chose to do it differently than the comic did, which yeah, might not be to every fan's liking, but it still gets the same point across, which, you know, is the point of adaptation at the end of the day. I've noticed a lot of fandom types tend to have this belief that if an adaptation isn't one-to-one with the source material, then it's automatically a bad adaptation, which in my opinion, this is not only wrong, but incredibly close-minded. Adaptations are supposed to deliver the same core themes and ideas of the source material, not be clones of them. Taking a concept from the source and doing the same thing but with a different approach might not be something you like, but it's not unfaithful. Dave's coolness being portrayed as more loud and smarmy instead of aloof and chill isn't missing the point of the character, because it still gets the idea that Dave plays up the persona of being surface level cool to others across to a viewer. I will admit, I do miss the whole geographical size rant he went on in the comic, but I do understand that fluff like that is going to be cut out of the show for the sake of pacing. Though it does leave me curious what else will be cut out dialogue-wise in future episodes for the sake of the new format and its pacing. I also love the bit at the end that teases visuals for future story beats, and that anime opening ass visual roll call showing all the trolls we'll get to see in future episodes. Gamzee, my beloved! Regardless, I overall enjoyed the pilot, and I hope future episodes can keep up the momentum. I have more high-effort videos in the works right now, like the earlier mentioned collab with Mr. Stubb that's also based around Homestuck, as well as a massive video essay discussing Mirror's Edge, among some other smaller video projects like a video comparing Ocarina of Time's dungeon design to that of Tomb Raider 1's. Oh, and obviously I'm working on my own cartoon pilot with the Curse Blockers pilot that's still in production. I'm 100% not getting it done this year like I expected to do because of outside snags in production, but it's still being worked on. Animation takes time, after all. Does anyone know how to end videos?